Ethan Blake had never liked quiet moments. As a security officer aboard the vast Horizon station, he had grown accustomed to the constant hum of machinery, the chatter of alien diplomats, and the distant echoes of cargo lifts moving across the station's enormous docking bays. Humans had only recently joined the Galactic Council, and every human officer knew that their species was constantly watched, studied, and sometimes judged harshly by other civilizations. Ethan prided himself on being alert, disciplined, and unshakable. Yet nothing in his training had prepared him for the sudden laughter that echoed across his room that evening. The door to his quarters slid open with a soft hiss, a sound he had memorized as signaling authorized entry. But tonight, no one had clearance to come in. Ethan's hand instinctively went to the stun baton at his side. The figure that stepped inside was not threatening in a traditional sense, yet everything about her presence commanded attention. She moved with a fluid grace, her laughter soft and melodious, yet undeniably confident, like someone who belonged anywhere and everywhere. Her eyes, a striking shade of violet, sparkled with amusement as she surveyed the room, unbothered by the fact that she was not invited. "Ethan Blake," she said, her voice playful but tinged with authority. "I hoped you wouldn't be asleep." Ethan blinked, unsure whether to respond with suspicion or disbelief. "Who are you?" he asked cautiously, maintaining a firm grip on his baton. She smiled, stepping closer. "I am Lyra," she said simply. "You may remember me, though I doubt you thought much about that day. I came to see you." Ethan's mind raced. Lyra, the name was familiar but not immediately clear. And yet there was a sense of recognition, a flash from the past, a memory of someone he had helped long ago without even knowing her significance. He lowered his weapon slightly but remained alert. "I don't understand. Why are you here?" Lyra laughed again, a sound like chimes in a gentle breeze. It was warm, teasing, yet carried the weight of confidence that suggested she was fully aware of the effect her presence had. She walked closer, closing the distance between them in a way that made Ethan tense, not with fear, but with the instinctual surprise of someone breaking his carefully maintained personal space. She reached out, a delicate hand brushing against his arm as if testing boundaries he never expected to be tested. "This," she said, almost whispering, "is how my people greet those we trust. It is not an act of disrespect, but a test. And you, Ethan Blake, are being tested." Ethan's mind spun. Trust. Test. He knew this was no ordinary diplomatic visit. Lyra was not merely visiting the station for ceremonial purposes. There was a reason behind this sudden intrusion, and whatever it was connected to him personally. He recalled the incident years ago, on a remote mining colony under attack from pirates. Ethan had been part of a small human rescue team, working tirelessly to save the trapped workers. Among them had been a Velari, a species known for their secrecy and emotional openness. He had no idea at the time that the Velari was someone important, yet now, standing before him, that connection made sense. Lyra's gaze softened, studying him with curiosity and subtle amusement. "You saved one of us back then," she said. "I never forgot." "Humans are unpredictable, but they are also capable of rare courage. I wanted to see if you still carry that spark." Ethan could only nod, feeling a strange mix of pride, confusion, and unease. He had spent his life learning how to control situations, yet nothing could have prepared him for an unexpected reunion like this. An unannounced visit from a high-ranking alien envoy in his private quarters, with her laughter filling the space between them. Meanwhile, across the station, hidden surveillance sensors began to flicker. The Horizon station's AI had noticed unusual energy fluctuations associated with Lyra's arrival. Security protocols labeled the encounter as high risk, though they could not categorize why. Other officers, working distant posts, saw only anomalous readings. A human officer in close proximity with a Velari envoy, unusual heart rate spikes, and minor disturbances in the room's energy field. Little did Ethan know, his every reaction was being silently recorded and analyzed. Lyra stepped closer, her movements deliberate, graceful yet casual. She didn't touch him further, but the subtle shift in her posture suggested a deeper strategy. "You see," she said softly, "we Velari use emotional insight as a tool. Understanding how someone reacts under stress tells us more than any verbal exchange. And you, Ethan, are human. Your species' emotional responses are intense and often revealing." Ethan tried to steady his breathing. He was trained to control his emotions to keep his thoughts sharp under pressure, but this situation was unlike any training scenario. It wasn't a combat test. It wasn't a simulation. It was an intricate psychological assessment by a species whose culture he barely understood. And he unknowingly was part of a larger game, one with stakes that reached far beyond his quarters. "Why me?" he asked, trying to maintain calm. "Why not someone from the council? A diplomat? Surely I'm not important enough for whatever this is." Lyra's laughter softened, but there was a seriousness underneath it now. "Because humans see the world differently," she explained. "You act on instinct, yet your instincts are guided by morality and compassion. You helped one of my people without knowing their rank or status. That kind of action does not go unnoticed. It tells us about humanity in ways politics cannot." Ethan was silent, absorbing her words. He realized that this encounter, as disorienting as it was, carried purpose. Lyra's behavior was unconventional, yes, but it was deliberate. She wasn't here to seduce or intimidate. She was here to observe, to assess, and perhaps to establish a bond based on mutual trust. He glanced around his quarters, suddenly hyper-aware of the subtle hum of systems, the flickering lights, and the small display panels showing diplomatic schedules. The station itself was a maze of political tension, a place where alliances shifted as quickly as the starlight reflecting off its massive hull. And in this moment, Ethan realized that his personal encounter with Lyra might not remain personal for long. Others on the station were watching, waiting, analyzing, and forming opinions about humanity through the lens of this unusual interaction. "I don't know what to say," Ethan admitted finally. "This isn't normal." Lyra smiled knowingly. "Normal is relative. And humans are new to the council. You are still learning what is acceptable and what is unexpected. That is why I came, not to startle you, but to see how you respond, how you think, how you feel." Ethan felt a mix of tension and curiosity. The human desire to control situations clashed with the Velari approach of subtle observation and emotional testing. He knew that his reaction now could affect more than just his standing. It could influence how other species perceived humans as a whole. For the first time, Ethan understood the gravity of Lyra's visit. This was more than personal recognition. It was a diplomatic test disguised as a personal encounter. He had to act carefully, yet authentically, showing the qualities that defined humanity: courage, integrity, and empathy, even when circumstances were unusual and unpredictable. Lyra moved toward a small console, her hands gliding over the holographic interface. Data streams flickered, showing encrypted communications, diplomatic logs, and energy readings that Ethan could barely comprehend. She explained calmly that someone was manipulating tensions on the station, creating a crisis designed to frame humanity as aggressive. "I needed to see if you were someone who could handle this," she said. "Someone who could think clearly, act decisively, and maintain trust under scrutiny." Ethan absorbed the weight of her words. He realized that this unexpected encounter was the first step in uncovering a hidden threat, one that could endanger not just himself, but the entire human race. Despite the tension, a subtle bond began to form. Ethan recognized that Lyra's unusual approach, her laughter, her bold entry, her unexpected physical closeness, was not recklessness. It was strategy. She was human enough to understand courage, yet alien enough to see beyond conventional human reactions. And in that strange intersection, a partnership was quietly beginning. Hours passed unnoticed as they spoke, analyzed, and observed the anomalies on the station. Ethan felt his understanding of the galaxy expand. The Velari were not capricious. They were methodical, emotionally intelligent, and capable of seeing the broader consequences of every action. And here, in his quarters, the human and the Velari began to form an understanding that would shape the events to come. By the time Lyra left, sliding the door closed behind her, Ethan sat in silence, processing the encounter. He realized that this was not a simple diplomatic visit. It was a test, a warning, and an invitation. Humanity had been noticed, for better or worse, and Ethan had been chosen as the first human to demonstrate the species' defining traits: courage, empathy, and resilience. As the soft hum of the station filled the room once more, Ethan understood that the galaxy was watching. And somehow, in the midst of fear, curiosity, and unexpected laughter, he felt ready to meet it. Ethan woke the next day still thinking about Lyra's sudden visit. Her laughter, her confidence, and the strange intensity of her presence stayed with him. The memory of her violet eyes seemed to follow him, even as he moved through the busy corridors of the Horizon Station. The station had never felt so crowded. Alien species of all shapes and sizes moved quickly, their conversations blending into a hum of languages he could barely recognize. Humans were still a rare sight here, and every step Ethan took drew curious glances. He tried to focus on his duties, but something had changed. He could feel it in the subtle way others looked at him. Human unpredictability now carried weight. He had been a normal security officer yesterday, but today, after Lyra's visit, he sensed the station watching him in a new way. It was not overt surveillance. It was subtle, deliberate, as if the galaxy itself was measuring humanity's response to the unexpected. Hours passed, and Ethan found himself summoned to the station's central observation deck. Lyra was already there, standing before a massive holographic map that displayed the station, its docking bays, and several nearby star systems. She turned as he entered, a small smile playing across her lips. "You arrived on time," she said, her voice calm but carrying a hint of amusement. "Good. Punctuality is one of the traits that keeps humans alive." Ethan nodded, careful to keep his tone neutral. "You called me here? Why?" Lyra gestured to the hologram, highlighting several areas of the station with a series of glowing red markers. "These," she explained, "are anomalies I have detected. Unexplained energy fluctuations, subtle system overrides, and small attacks on the station's security protocols. Nothing that would alarm the Council yet, but enough to be dangerous if ignored." Ethan frowned. He had seen minor malfunctions before, often due to simple technical errors, but these were different. They were calculated, coordinated, and precise. "This doesn't seem accidental," he said. "Someone is trying to hide this." "Exactly," Lyra said, "and the timing is suspicious. The anomalies appear just when human representatives are nearby. You see, some species here already see humans as volatile. If these events escalate, they may interpret it as aggression, and that could justify preemptive action against humanity." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The stakes were much higher than he had imagined. His personal encounter with Lyra yesterday was just the beginning. Now he realized that the Velari envoy had brought him into the heart of a political storm. Lyra turned back to him, her expression serious. "I need someone I can trust to investigate this, someone who can think like a human and act quickly. That person is you, Ethan." Ethan hesitated. He had experience with security, yes, but this was different. It was not a training exercise. It was diplomacy, politics, and survival all at once. "Why me?" he asked again. "Because humans react in ways others cannot predict," Lyra said. "Other species rely on logic, patterns, and established rules. Humans, when tested, act on instinct and morality. You do not follow rules blindly. You make choices based on understanding, loyalty, and courage. That makes you effective." Ethan swallowed, realizing that the compliment carried more weight than he expected. Trust in this context was not personal. It was strategic, and he was being entrusted with the responsibility of representing humanity at its finest, in the middle of a galaxy that did not yet fully respect his species. They began their investigation immediately. Lyra showed Ethan how to access restricted data networks within the station, bypassing layers of encryption with a grace that was almost elegant. He watched as her fingers moved over holographic panels, highlighting data streams, alien protocols, and encrypted messages. Every gesture was purposeful, every movement precise. "Many alien civilizations," Lyra explained, "see humans as impulsive, dangerous, and emotional. That is partly true. But what they do not understand is that our emotional intelligence can be a strength. We sense deception. We detect dishonesty. We respond to danger in ways that are unpredictable. That unpredictability, used wisely, can protect humanity." Ethan listened carefully. He had never thought of human emotions as a tactical advantage, but he understood the point. Other species relied on analysis and protocol, but humans had something different: adaptability, empathy, and courage that often allowed them to survive when rules alone failed. Their first target of investigation was the station's communications network. Ethan watched as Lyra pinpointed unusual transmissions, encrypted messages that had bypassed normal security protocols. They were brief, almost imperceptible, but their timing suggested coordination with the anomalies Ethan had seen. "This faction," Lyra said, "is skilled. They are trying to manipulate perceptions to frame humanity as the aggressor." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So someone wants humans blamed for attacks humans didn't commit." "Exactly," Lyra confirmed. "And if the Council believes it, war could follow. Humans are new, still learning how to navigate galactic politics, and they can be easily misunderstood." They spent hours tracing signals, decoding messages, and analyzing patterns. In the process, Ethan began to notice subtle cultural cues in Lyra's behavior. She was bold, open, and emotionally expressive, but it was not carelessness. Her gestures, her laughter, even her proximity to him were all tools, methods of communication and trust-building that humans could rarely interpret correctly. During a particularly tense moment, Lyra stopped suddenly. Her eyes narrowed as she observed a live feed showing a minor confrontation between alien delegates. Two species were arguing aggressively over station resources. Lyra's violet gaze softened as she spoke. "Many species here underestimate humans because they see only strength or impulsiveness. They do not see loyalty, courage, or integrity. You, Ethan, represent that potential. That is why I trust you." Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and pressure. The weight of humanity's reputation now rested, in part, on his actions. He realized that every decision he made could shape not only the immediate outcome, but the perception of humans across the galaxy. Their investigation led them deeper into the station, through restricted areas, hidden maintenance tunnels, and secure observation decks. They encountered sabotage, hacked drones moving in patterns that suggested surveillance, locked doors that opened only with alien biometric authentication, and systems that had been subtly manipulated to fail at critical moments. Through it all, Ethan learned more about Velari culture. Lyra explained that her species' openness was a strategic choice, not a weakness. By expressing emotions, they could detect deception, build trust quickly, and sense danger before it became obvious. Humans, she noted, were similar in their unpredictability, though more impulsive. As they worked together, Ethan and Lyra began to form an understanding. It was not friendship in the human sense, nor was it romantic. It was trust, a recognition of competence, courage, and shared purpose. They relied on one another in ways that other officers and envoys would never understand. Late in the day, they discovered a major lead, evidence that an ancient species, long thought neutral, had infiltrated the Council. Their goal was clear: create conflict, manipulate perceptions, and frame humans as a threat. If successful, they could destabilize the galaxy and reignite long-standing rivalries, leaving humans caught in the crossfire. Ethan stared at the data, disbelief and determination warring in his chest. The situation was worse than he imagined. The anomalies, the sabotage, the subtle attacks, they were all part of a coordinated plot designed to provoke humans into acting aggressively, giving the Council a reason to sanction military action against Earth. Lyra observed him quietly. "Do not panic," she said. "Panic is what they expect. You must act deliberately, calmly, and decisively. Humanity's strength lies not in dominating others, but in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Ethan took a deep breath. He realized that Lyra's bold entrance into his quarters, her laughter, and her unconventional behavior had prepared him for this moment. She had tested his instincts, gauged his reactions, and now he was ready to act, not as an individual but as a representative of his species. They continued their work through the night, piecing together fragmented evidence, uncovering the hidden operatives, and predicting their next moves. Every discovery brought new challenges: hacked drones, misleading data, and council members who were already forming opinions against humans. Yet with each step, Ethan felt more confident. He and Lyra were learning to anticipate the enemy, understand the broader strategy, and counter it using both logic and instinct. By the time the artificial sunrise bathed the station in a soft golden glow, Ethan and Lyra had mapped out a plan. They would present their findings to a small, trusted council subgroup, exposing the infiltrators and preventing them from framing humanity. But they knew the final challenge would be public, revealing the conspiracy in front of the full council without triggering panic, mistrust, or aggression against Earth. Ethan leaned against the observation deck railing, watching distant stars glint against the blackness of space. He understood now that humanity's survival was not guaranteed. They were under observation, judged by species who did not yet understand them. But he also understood that humans had something unique: resilience, courage, and the willingness to act ethically even under pressure. Lyra approached, her expression calm but determined. "The Council underestimates humans," she said softly, "but they will learn. And you, Ethan, will help them learn the truth, not through power but through action, integrity, and courage." Ethan nodded. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, but it was not unbearable. He felt ready. For the first time, he realized that the galaxy was not just observing humanity. It was waiting to see if humans could rise to the challenge. And rise they would. Together, Ethan and Lyra prepared to face the Council, to expose the conspirators, and to protect humanity from those who would see them destroyed before they had a chance to prove themselves. The stakes were higher than ever, but the first test had already shown him something vital. Humans, when united, were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of remarkable courage. And this was only the beginning. The Horizon station had entered a tense quiet. The usual hum of engines, chatter of alien diplomats, and whirring of maintenance drones now seemed muted, as though the station itself were holding its breath. Every species present felt it, and Ethan Blake could sense the anticipation pressing on him like gravity. The anomalies they had uncovered in secret the previous day were now reaching critical stages. Evidence had surfaced showing that a powerful faction was manipulating events to make humans appear aggressive, reckless, and dangerous. If the Council fell for it, Earth could be labeled a threat, and humanity might face preemptive action from the galaxy's most influential powers. Ethan stood in the observation deck beside Lyra as they reviewed the final data streams. The conspirators had been careful, leaving traces subtle enough to evade casual detection, yet blatant enough for those willing to look beyond appearances. They had created fake attack logs, intercepted communications, and even staged minor sabotage incidents to frame humans. Each discovery felt like peeling another layer of a poisonous onion, revealing a deeper, more dangerous plot. Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes calm but intense. "This is where it becomes risky. Once we present this evidence, there will be no turning back. Every action, every word, every decision will be watched. The Council will test us, question us, and try to discredit us. We cannot afford mistakes." Ethan nodded. His mind raced, not with fear, but with strategy. He had faced danger before in pirate attacks, training simulations, and station emergencies. But this was different. It was political warfare, cloaked in deception, and the consequences were not only personal. They could decide the fate of humanity itself. Their first step was to gather trusted allies within the Council. They discreetly contacted several delegates known for fairness and impartiality. It was slow work. Some refused to risk their reputations, others were cautious, unwilling to confront a conspiracy that could ripple across the galaxy. But a small group agreed to help, intrigued by the evidence Ethan and Lyra presented and willing to see the truth revealed. Ethan felt a growing respect for Lyra as they worked. Her approach, bold yet careful, blended emotional intuition with tactical precision. She could sense when an ally was hesitant, when an enemy was lying, and when a situation demanded courage beyond calculation. In many ways, she was human-like in her ability to perceive others' intentions, but amplified, sharper, and more deliberate. Ethan realized that her trust in him was not blind. It was based on observation, on the rare combination of his moral courage and calm under pressure. As they prepared to confront the Council publicly, Ethan rehearsed how he would present the evidence. He knew that words alone would not suffice. The Council had seen humans act impulsively in small skirmishes, and many delegates believed that unpredictability equaled danger. He needed to show them reason, integrity, and above all, the uniquely human trait of loyalty even when misunderstood. The Council chamber was enormous, a domed space with floating seats circling a central platform. Alien delegates filled the room, their forms diverse and intimidating. Winged species, scaled species, beings with multiple limbs and eyes. The weight of centuries of politics pressed on Ethan as he stepped forward, Lyra beside him, carrying the evidence in secure holographic displays. "Honored delegates," Ethan began, his voice steady, "we have discovered an infiltration within the Council itself. This faction has staged attacks, manipulated systems, and fabricated evidence to frame humanity as a threat. If unchecked, their actions could provoke conflict, endanger millions, and destabilize the galaxy." Whispers filled the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward, curious, others remained suspicious. Ethan knew this was expected. Trust was not given, it was earned. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "The conspirators rely on deception and fear," she said, her voice resonant across the chamber. "They counted on humans' unpredictability being used against us. But humans act not on instinct alone, they act on ethics, compassion, and loyalty. Their actions protect allies and innocent lives. Ethan Blake is an example of these qualities, and he has gathered irrefutable evidence of the plot against humanity." The room fell silent. Lyra activated the holographic displays. Messages, logs, and system anomalies appeared in midair, showing the coordinated attacks and manipulations. Ethan watched as delegates absorbed the data. The evidence was undeniable. The conspirators had been clever, but the truth was clearer, sharper, and more compelling. One elder delegate, a tall, silver-scaled Velari elder, stepped forward, her eyes thoughtful. "If this evidence is accurate," she said slowly, "then the actions against humanity would have been based on falsehoods. It would be a grave injustice." Ethan nodded, aware of the delicate balance of diplomacy. "It is accurate," he said, "and humanity has no desire for domination or conflict. We only act to protect, to survive, and to honor commitments made to allies. This conspiracy could have led to war we did not choose." Suddenly, the council chamber's systems flickered. Small alarms echoed as the conspirators attempted a last-minute interference, trying to disrupt the presentation and discredit the evidence. Ethan's training kicked in. He signaled Lyra, who adjusted the holographic displays to bypass the sabotage. Within moments, the interference was neutralized, leaving the evidence intact. Gasps filled the chamber. Several delegates looked shocked at how quickly the disruption was countered. Others began to whisper among themselves, realizing that someone had tried to manipulate the session. The tide of perception began to turn. Ethan took a deep breath. "This was deliberate," he said. "The conspirators are attempting to provoke fear, to manipulate perceptions of humans, but we are here to show the truth, not to escalate conflict. Humanity's actions are guided by morality, not impulse." Lyra added, "Emotions are not weakness, they are insight. Humanity's unpredictability is not danger, it is resilience. It allows them to see deception, act with courage, and protect life in ways other species may not understand." The room remained tense for a moment. Then, slowly, delegates began to speak. Questions were asked, clarifications demanded, and the evidence was analyzed in detail. Each step reinforced the integrity of Ethan's claims. The conspirators could not hide. Finally, a council vote was called, not to punish humanity, but to authorize an investigation into the faction behind the plot. The results were unanimous. Humanity had been vindicated, its reputation preserved, and the conspirators exposed. Ethan exhaled, feeling the weight of relief and triumph wash over him. Lyra stood beside him, her expression calm but pleased. "You have proven your value," she said. "Not through aggression or dominance, but through courage, intelligence, and loyalty. Humanity is now seen for what it truly is, a species capable of resilience, trust, and honor." Ethan smiled faintly, realizing the significance of the moment. He had been tested in ways he could not have anticipated, yet he had succeeded not because of technology, weapons, or alien insight, but because of the traits that defined his species: courage, compassion, the willingness to act rightly even when misunderstood. Later, as the chamber emptied, Ethan and Lyra stood together overlooking the station's docking bays. Ships from distant systems glimmered under artificial light, and the vastness of space stretched beyond, infinite and mysterious. "The galaxy watches us now," Lyra said softly. "They have seen what humans can do when faced with deception, danger, and misunderstanding. They will not forget it." Ethan nodded, feeling a quiet pride. "And we will continue to show them," he said, "not through fear but through action. Through choices that reflect who we are, not just what we can do." Lyra's violet eyes reflected the stars. "You have learned quickly, Ethan Blake. Humans are still young in the galaxy, but they are stronger than many realize. They are unpredictable, yes, but in ways that can change history for the better." Ethan felt the weight of responsibility, but it was tempered by resolve. He had seen what could be accomplished through trust, courage, and integrity. He had seen that humanity, when united and guided by morality, could stand against deception, manipulation, and ancient threats alike. The station began its routine operations again, but Ethan knew that nothing would ever feel routine the same way again. He had learned the truth. Humans were not just another species in the galaxy. They were a force capable of shaping destiny, a presence that could influence entire civilizations through courage, understanding, and the choice to protect others. Lyra gave him a small smile, one of recognition and respect. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The galaxy will test you again, but you are ready." Ethan looked out at the stars, feeling their vastness, their mystery, and the weight of what lay ahead. He understood that the true power of humanity was not in domination or technology, but in the uniquely human ability to act with courage, empathy, and steadfastness, even in the face of uncertainty. As the stars glittered against the blackness of space, Ethan and Lyra stood together, prepared for whatever the galaxy might bring next. Humanity had survived its first test, but more importantly, it had earned its place as a species of integrity, strength, and hope. The universe had seen the truth, and humanity had not failed. The Council would remember this day, the galaxy would remember it, and Ethan knew that every human, from Earth to the farthest colony, carried the potential to rise above fear, deception, and doubt. They were young, yes, but they were capable of greatness. And with that knowledge, Ethan stepped forward, ready to meet the future. The stars awaited, infinite and unyielding, but humanity was ready.